When the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim came out in 2011, the amount of things you could do in the game was considered enormous, and I think it still holds up today. You can fight dragons, become a master archer, attend Durmstrang, the famously Nordic school for aspiring dark witches and wizards, and for some reason you can also cut your own lumber. I studied wood technology and I've never used my diploma in a professional sense, so I decided what a better way to use it and analyze a video game's interpretation of what sawmills would look like in a fantasy world, and then decide which one I would want to work at. Instead of a traditional ranking system, I'm going to use my own criteria to decide which mill is best for me. Now, to be clear, all the mills in Skyrim are pretty much identical, so I'm going to be looking at other factors like perceived economic value and logistical implications that made the criteria sound a lot more fancy than it actually is, but anyways, here they are. Wood. A wood mill needs wood, right? So we need an ample supply of the right species, and logistically it needs to be accessible via either road or water. Water. This one is exactly what it says on the tin. Sawmills need a lekker supply of water that doesn't risk drying up or negatively affecting the mill. Social. This one is about work-life balance. Is there a nice tavern I can frequent? Do I have access to daily supplies? Are my colleagues nice? Is there a cult of vampires hiding in the woods nearby? That actually happens a lot more often than you think. And the last one is security. Skyrim is a dangerous place. There are bandits, wild animals, this guy called the Dragonborn running around killing people's chickens and stealing stuff. I need to know that I'm going to feel safe where I work and where I live. There are 10 separate mill locations all over Skyrim, so to save time, here are my 6 mills that do not make the cut for me. And yes, that is a pun. Right at the bottom of the list, we have Half Moon Mill. Seems beautiful at first glance, but when you look around, there are some troublesome signs. The owner has red glowing eyes. I'm afraid she might hurt me. If you know, you know.
Why don't you stay a while?
Then we have Heartwood Mill. It does have 2 guards walking around, but only the owner and her kid live and work there. And she explicitly tells me that she's running out of money, so I don't think I'm going to get my weekends off there, so it's a no.
Mill work sure is boring, but at least I don't have to work in a nasty mine.
Oh, that's really hectic, little dude. Mixed Water Mill has a bit of a staff issue. All of the men basically left to go fight the war, so I just know the workload is going to be way too much. Also, there's a really creepy ambient noise here, and I don't want to stay to find out what that's about. Anger's Mill is another no for me. Skyrim is set in late autumn, and it's already full on snowing here, and I'm not keen on harvesting frozen trees. Also, the employees seem a bit rude, and there's axes lying around everywhere. Well, actually, let's ask one of them and see what they think of working there.
I don't need to talk to you. Get lost.
Well, there you have it. Morthal is the first actual village to make it to my no-no list. Besides the fact that the mill is doing financially well with 3 employees working there, there are a lot of other factors counting against it. Ghost children, nobody likes living there, a cult of vampires living in the woods nearby. Yeah, it has one of those. Also, it's a snowy swamp, so that should be the only real reason, really. Now, Falkreath, or Deadwood Mill, actually ticks a lot of my criteria. There are lots of trees, a tavern, blacksmith, which is really important for a mill. However, the water source seems questionable at best, and it feels very unsafe there. Let me explain. Even though there are lots of guards and some defensive infrastructure, not only are there vampires, again, there are also werewolves, which is probably worse. And I'm pretty sure the Jarl, the guy who's in charge of the town, is some sort of an imperial puppet, which suggests a kind of surveillance state in the current conflict between the Imperials and Stormcloaks. This civil or proxy war will actually be a recurring theme in this video, as large-scale conflicts will often have social and economical ramifications on the general population. This video is getting way too real. Also, Falkreath has the biggest graveyard in Skyrim, so no. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit more about the environmental storytelling of Skyrim. The game is obviously set in something representing a Scandinavian country during the Middle Ages. We can gather that from all of the Nordic names and just pure Viking vibes, right? Now, obviously, Skyrim is set in a completely different reality than our own. We inhabit different planets and even different universes. So now, knowing all of this, let's try and analyze these sawmills through our Earth lenses. Right off the bat, I want to say Skyrim does a bloody good job of representing a working lumber mill, especially considering when the game came out and obvious limitations of hardware. Artistic license also needs to be considered when doing a thought experiment like this, because sometimes certain details will be omitted for the sake of ease or somewhat just because. For example, let's have a look at this tree stump. Just looks like any normal tree stump. That's what I always thought. However, as I looked closer, I realized the cutting pattern on this stump is exactly the cutting pattern you would see from a tree that's been felled by a chainsaw. Now, obviously chainsaws did not exist in Skyrim, and cutting down a tree with an axe would have been the preferred method during this period. The stumps in Skyrim should probably have looked something similar to this. Now, I don't know if this was a mistake or something of an engine limitation, but I think it's a fun look into the world of game building. The stump provides the necessary information to you, the player, that there's some sort of development nearby, and that's all it really needs to do. Let's talk about what the mills get right. The earliest proof we have of a sawmill is from the 3rd century. The design was a little different, and seemingly it was used to cut stone, but the technology would have existed during this period. All of these mills are driven by water power. You do get different types of water-powered mills, but all 10 mills in Skyrim use undershot water wheels to drive the saw. Quick funny thing about the mill at Morthal in vanilla Skyrim, the water wheel is actually rotating the wrong way. The water is like clearly flowing that direction, and the mill is going in the opposite direction. Just a funny thing to look out for. The proportions of the sawmill structure look accurate, maybe a little bit advanced, but still good. The logs have their own carriage system. The sash and saw seems right. I mean, heck, even the saw teeth are facing the right way. Now, if you want to be really specific, there are a couple strange things happening in the sawmills of Skyrim. Only a geek like me would even notice or really think about. For example, the blade seems to be cutting on both strokes. With a frame saw like this, it should only really be cutting on the downstroke. That's an easy fix though, it's just a timing issue. I also wonder about how they get the logs up there. Based on how they feed them into the carriage system, it means they're carrying them, which is wild. But I think it's understandable if you check out their physiques. There are many more things I could point out, like the cutting pattern or how the carriage system even works. I also think that pit saws would have been more prevalent and more affordable during this period. But the question we should ask is, would the game have been any better if any of that stuff had been included? I don't think so. I mean, this was literally Game of the Year in 2011. I really appreciate that they included such an arbitrary aspect into the game in the first place, and for some reason I remember seeing a mill in this game for the first time 15 years ago. It's peak environmental storytelling, and I'm sure not just a woody like me appreciates them. Okay, so now that we have a good idea about why I think these mills are so cool, let's really get into the vleis and artipels of this video. We've already removed the first mills where I couldn't see myself working for a substantial amount of time. Now, let's look at our top contenders using our aforementioned criteria. The first mill I would consider for employment is Ivarstead. Now, this settlement is probably one of the most beautiful places in Skyrim. I'm a big lover of mountains and rivers, and the yellowing leaves of the aspen trees just really do it for me. Quick side note, can someone please explain to me what the difference is between birch and aspen? I'm from Africa, so I have no context on the difference between these two trees. Let me know in the comments. Alsjeblieft dank. Ivarstead has this way of feeling a lot bigger than it actually is. It's only about 5 structures. It's located at the source of both Lake Gier and a tributary river of the White River. So that checks our water criteria. There's a lot of water here, and I don't think it's going to dry up anytime soon. The settlement does feel quite safe. There are lots of guards walking around, but I'm more concerned about the supposedly haunted barrow looming over the village. Look, I'm a curious person, and I just know if I had a few too many ales, I would probably go and investigate this thing and get myself killed. That's more of a me being an idiot problem though. Look, for the social criteria, we have a good supply of food with a successful farm, and I'm sure lots of other supplies as well, but the people here are kind of weird. You see, Ivarstead is a gateway to the throat of the world, which is home to the greybeards, and people often pass through here on a pilgrimage to said mountaintop. And boy, do these people talk a lot about pilgrims.
You don't look like a pilgrim.
And generally they don't seem stoked to be living here. The owner of the mill, Temba Whitearm, which is a fun name, really doesn't like bears because they're causing damage to her trees, which originally I thought was kind of weird, and the conservationist in me judged her really hard, but my experience with bears is obviously zero. Anyways, the bears are causing so much economical damage to her timber that she's struggling to keep the mill afloat. Now, about these aspen trees, or birch, whatever they are, If you take a look at the logs that are being cut at the mill, they are obviously a different species than these ones. My guess would be it's probably one of the local pine species that are being used, likely for construction purposes. So you have access to a lot of wood, but unfortunately it's the wrong species. Luckily there's a road that runs through the mill, but I still gotta give it a thumbs down on the wood criteria. So this ain't our mill. For the next mill, we are going to the Halfingar Hold, to the Dragon Bridge community. The village itself is nice and quaint. It has good access to water and wood, so in terms of logistics, the mill is set up very well. The social scene is nice and everyone's really friendly, and the owner of the mill, Örjan, seems positive and says the mill is doing really well because of the current war. There is also a strong imperial presence in the village, so based on that information, this should be 4 out of 4, right? Not really. You see, when you speak to Örjan's wife, she says he has a bit of a drinking problem and is currently struggling to pay off his loans, and I'm no entrepreneur, but that doesn't sound good. Also, the village is situated along the dramatic Karth River, and spanning the river is, you guessed it, a cool bridge with a dragon statue on it. Not much seems to be known about the bridge, how old it is or who exactly built it, but what we do know is that the only real way to cross the Karth River is by using this bridge, which makes it an important strategic target in a civil war, for example. The strong imperial presence in Dragon Bridge is called Penitus Oculatus. They are an organization for the imperial faction carrying out espionage and assassinations. Sounds a little Gestapo-y to me. In all seriousness, the civilian population of this community seems to be stuck in a really bad spot. Some of them mention how they've been treated poorly by soldiers on both sides, and they also express their fear for the strategic importance of the bridge, foreseeing a battle for dominance over it. It's moments like these where I really appreciate playing games again with a little bit more life experience, as the stories in games become more nuanced and it just adds to the experience. Anyways, basically I don't think I have job security at this mill, and I also don't want to become a displaced refugee. Not even sure why I considered this place to begin with. Next, we need to go a little further downriver to the Solitude Sawmill. Now, initially when I did my research, I thought this was the place where I really wanted to work. It's got stunning views, there seems to be some good fishing spots, and it has a good, strong water source. Trees can be transported to the mill by road or by floating them downriver. Örjan, the mill owner, seems like a good guy, and his employee says he treats him well. On the surface, there's not much going on at this mill, but if you dig a little bit deeper, you'll hear that apparently this mill was almost burnt down recently by the Stormcloaks, suggesting that it's obviously important to the Imperial Army. Its proximity to Solitude and the ships nearby would add to that belief. Weirdly enough, there's a sizable Stormcloak camp not far from here. Maybe those Penitus Oculatus guys aren't that good at their job? Anyways, if I work here, I would once again risk putting myself at the center of a power struggle. But it goes deeper than that. Örjan tells me that the location of the mill might not be the safest, but at least the guards don't come poking around. And then I found this. A dead guard on the premises. What exactly is Örjan hiding? Is he potentially in cahoots with the Stormcloaks? Is he playing both sides for some type of financial gain? This is exactly how conspiracy theories start, right? Kind of the lack of evidence is proof for the theory. Anyways, the next problem I have with the mill is its proximity to the sea. This is obviously great for maritime export, but I think it could lead to some problems further down the line. You see, the closer you are to a river mouth, the better your chances are that the salinity levels in the water become higher. And salt water and machinery means heavy maintenance and a lot of downtime, which is not good for a mill. Damn, you know, I felt a real connection to this place. I really thought it was the one, but in the end, the choice ended up being kind of obvious. Now finally, out of all 10 mills in Skyrim that I think is the best, the mill I would choose is the mill most people probably would have seen on their first playthrough of Skyrim. Riverwood not only checks all of my boxes, it has a lot of other things counting in its favor. Tree access is good, water is consistent, there is access to food and a place to chill after work, and even though there are no guards in Riverwood, and sometimes dragons do attack, it still feels very safe. Seems like a bit of a cop-out, but I really like this mill, okay? Now, remember how I said blacksmiths are really important for the maintenance of sawmills? Not just the moving parts, but the blades need to be sharpened and set. Well, there is one here, and Alvor says he spends a lot of time working on the mill. If you speak to Gerda, she will tell you that her family has been in the woodcutting business for generations. and the mill is obviously doing well because it employs 3 people. But by far, the most important thing that no other sawmill in Skyrim has is a sawmill dog. And even better, his name is Stump. Every good bushmill needs a dog. 10 out of 10, no notes. Look, maybe the nostalgia played too big a role in my final choice, but here's the thing. Let's get real here for 1 second. Riverwood for sure has its problems, but I can overlook them. I don't think you should choose a job without problems. I think you should rather choose a job with the problems that you want to solve. Riverwood is the first place I think of when I think of Skyrim. A small village built up around a sawmill, nestled in a valley next to a flowing river. If you are a game developer and you're watching this, I implore you, please add more sawmills to games. I think they are underappreciated and overlooked. Anyways, this has been my ramble about sawmills in Skyrim. Cheers. Yo, man, hectic. I can't believe I finally got this video out. If you've made it this far, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. I kind of went back and forth on how in depth I wanted to go about the sawmills of Skyrim, and for storytelling purposes I decided to keep it brief, so I hope you enjoyed it. I'm interested in many different things. I have like 1 million ideas for this channel. I'm not even going to ask you to subscribe. I'm a dad with a job, so these videos are going to take a long while to come out. So give me some time, keep an eye out for my thumbnails. If you like those other videos, maybe stick around. Please have some lekker discussions in the comments about sawmills in Skyrim. And then finally, please give me other ideas of aspects in Skyrim you'd like me to cover. All the sources I used for my research are cited down below in the description, so if you're interested, have a look. That's all from me. Shop shop. Don't be a doers. Be lekker.